Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Stroll. I'm the CEO of Entisys360, and I want to welcome you to our, I don't know how many of these we've done, but the nth annual Executive Technology Exchange. I've been to or hosted many of these, and in San Francisco, I have to say, this is amazing. I didn't even know the Exploratorium could do something like this. For the people that aren't here, I figured they saw the Exploratorium and are probably circling the Palace of Fine Arts right now and don't realize that they've moved. So hopefully they'll figure it out at some point and make it down here. I'm especially excited about this one this year because we are in a time of change. Our business is turning 30 years old next year, which in the world of we're what you call a value-added reseller, meaning we sell computer solutions, both the products and the services, and hopefully we do a lot more than that and put the value back in V, so to speak, by becoming a good partner. And I think that there's never been a better time to be what I would call a good partner because we are going through so much change. This is no longer about products and speeds and feeds and what your budget is for servers and storage and network and all that other stuff. That's just a byproduct of what's important these days. What's important is how your businesses, our business as well, is transforming and how we are aligning with you to help you solve the problems that you're dealing with that go far beyond technology. We have made significant investments in the world of digital transformation, which those are the buzzwords of today, and we'll get sick of those in 6 months, and we'll create new buzzwords. But the bottom line is with digital transformation, really what that is utilizing things like creating cloud strategies, DevOps strategies, big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and figuring out not how to install it. I don't want to say that's the easy part, it's very complex, but how to make it a meaningful part of your business. These are not new concepts to business as a whole. We call it something different now, and the rate of change that we face as organizations is the real key in this. Once upon a time, we could plan out even our business 3 years at a time and then have to change our business in order to keep up with your changes. Now we have to be able to change our business 6 months at a time, and we only expect that to be able to accelerate. So as a VAR, that means we're creating platforms for providing service to you guys, providing information, providing resources, providing the speakers that we have today that are going to talk about some of these things overall. The second thing, a lot of you know us for our experience in the world of VDI. And we've done a lot of VDI type work for you, but we realize just like all other applications and data center platforms that we need to be able to have cloud conversations with you as a customer. Where are you going with your desktop or your workspaces? Where are your applications going? And like with server and data center type of solutions, it's not just a lift and shift philosophy. Lift and shift philosophies fail time and time again. It is philosophies of understanding users, workflow, applications, and optimization, both from a business and financial standpoint, as well as from a technological standpoint. So hopefully what we have for you today is a group of speakers that will create ideas and discussion and the opportunity for us to come back and talk to you again about what your digital transformation strategy is, talk about some of the workshops and partnership aspects of what we have with you, as well as talk about what your desktop or workspace transformation strategy is, and share some of the things that we're doing around creating, what do you call those, roadmaps. Nothing happens with a forklift. It's a process and a journey that we hope to go with you guys on. So I'm really excited to have you guys here today. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. You know, there's this thing while we're talking about all these fancy terms and words and businesses and processes, and it's, you know, by the way, we actually have to secure stuff. I know there's nothing in the news about breaches and problems and all these other things, but from time to time, you know, this is something that we just feel like we should touch on, to the point where we felt that this should be our first keynote speech. We just did this in Southern California a few weeks ago. We followed the same format. And obviously we've had now, which is very unusual in this day and age, 95, Matt, what is it, 22-year relationship with Citrix. And we're very fortunate to have, now I have to put these on and read, Kurt Romer, the Chief Security Strategist for Citrix Systems with us. Kurt leads security, compliance, risk, and privacy strategies for Citrix products. As a member of the Citrix CTO and Strategy Office, he drives ideation, I still got to get that word, innovation and technical direction for products and solutions that advance business productivity while ensuring information governance. An information services veteran with more than 30 years experience, his credentials include CISSP. He also served as commissioner for the U.S. Public Sector Cloud 2 initiative and led efforts to develop the PCI Security Standards Council Virtualization Guidance Information Supplement while serving on the Board of Advisors. You know why I didn't memorize that, right? Most importantly, he's going to talk a little bit about Citrix, but really the world of security and kind of his vision as a whole. We try to make sure we don't go too product deep in these, because to the point, we're all trying to solve problems, and we want to hear the thoughts, experiences, and ideas of everyone. So with that, Kurt. There's your build-up, buddy.
Thanks, Mike. Well, thanks. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Really excited to be here in this beautiful venue and looking forward to an interactive conversation. So if you've got some things to add, some questions to ask, things to interject, just please bring it up. Security is a real important topic because it touches all of us. It's funny, I was sitting there this morning thinking, hey, wait a second, you know, my 401k is out there. That's a pretty good amount of my net worth right now. And based on this Equifax breach, absolutely everybody can go out, get my information, be able to impersonate me, and go and change my account information and transfer everything out of my, I won't tell you who it's with, but out of my 401k. And so I'm actually calling my advisor later on and telling them to freeze the account. Anybody else thinking like this? Yeah, you really need to be. That's the state of security these days. We are unfortunately at risk. And I'm not going to belabor and talk about all the bad things for the next couple hours. Being a security guy, of course, I could do that. We have fun with that. But what I want to do is help all of us think a little bit more about the future of security and what we should be planning for as we look into the future and start thinking about where security is going, where it needs to go, and how to make it a lot more meaningful for all of us. So with that, jump into a couple things. You know, one of the things we want to do is provide a lot of questions to ask. And we should be asking many questions as we engage new services, as we utilize existing services, as we look at how our roles are changing, how our organizations are changing, and most importantly, how our relationships are changing. Who we're working with, who we're interacting with, who we're sharing data with. This is extremely important, and it goes well beyond just what most of us think about in terms of security, right? Which is what? What do we think about? Uh-oh, front row. I'm going to have to pick on somebody in the front row. What do we think about? We think firewalls. We think passwords. See, everybody's eating. I can't pick on you while you're eating. You think, you know, login events, stuff like that. If your security is just your login event, I would argue you've got some real issues, because if you're designing your entire security around restricting access, guess what? People already have access. People within your organization have access, third parties have access, hackers have access too, don't they? So if they've already got access, what should we be focusing on? We should be focusing on protecting usage. I'm not saying throw out access security. It's extremely important, but you can't just rely on that as your sole source of trust. And if you do, you're going to continue to experience a lot of the issues that we've had so far to date. So let's talk about how we can look at this a little bit differently. In terms of some of the topics to discuss, it's important to look at the trends that are facing security, and they're not just technology, you know, next-gen firewalls, next-gen antivirus, all this other next-gen stuff. Very important for the IT department, but security is so much more than that. There's business and socio-economic trends. There is a lot of trends out there that are driving how people are interacting, how they're communicating with each other. There's millennials, lots of other stuff that we have to factor in, because guess what? They change our notion of security and they change how we respond. Anybody think the organization, not your organization of course, but any organization might be getting in the way of us providing for better security? Yeah, it's a big part of it. we really have to revisit. If security right now is just a department and a product and something that somebody else does, yeah, that's where the organization is failing. Your security department should really be the cheerleaders, the people who are out there helping to make sure that you're getting everybody involved, that they're thinking about the right level of security and compliance and privacy that have to be part of everything you do. If the security department instead is this black box that a whole bunch of money and stuff goes into and nothing comes out of other than information for the board, you don't have the right security team right now. You're really going to need to take a look at that further. And we'll talk about that. Mobility, IoT, extremely important, right? What's IoT got to do with security, though? Everything. Everything? Why? I love that answer. Yeah, everything's connected. We have tens of billions going into hundreds of billions of devices that are connected through IoT. What is IoT? Internet of Things, right? But what is it? Don't think about the Internet of Things as these little bands we're wearing on our wrists and the internet-connected refrigerator and things like that. Think of IoT as the bridge between the physical and the cyber world. You really have to be doing that because that's what it is. In fact, IoT is so significant in a lot of sectors, manufacturing, healthcare in particular. It's adding another leg to the three-legged stool of security, which has been confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What's the new leg that's being added? Safety. With IoT being the bridge between the physical and the cyber worlds, autonomous vehicles, things that are decided for us as we walk into rooms, all these other factors combine to really make some big safety issues around IoT, and we've got to be thinking about that. And then also, I work for a vendor. You're not going to hear a Citrix commercial today, but I have to mention the words artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's just something every vendor has to do these days, right? So, but what does that mean? Most of the time when you hear about these, it's vendors saying, oh, we've got this new way of looking at logs and this new way of helping to provide some deeper insights based on our logs. And it's basically logging plus plus to them. AI and ML are so much more than that. Do you know what they are? When somebody says machine learning, what do you say? What is it? What does it do for you? Well, machine learning basically tells you what normal is. It takes a look and learns all the things that are going on, and it lets you know what's normal and what the outliers are, what might be abnormal. Remember, abnormal is not always bad. It might be opportunity. It might be optimization, some things you need to know. But that's what machine learning is all about, and it's very useful technology. What about artificial intelligence? Automation, yep, doing things for you. But it's also helping you answer those questions and ask those questions that you never even thought of. If your artificial intelligence system is just doing things a little better than you are today, go back and fine-tune it a little bit more. It should be giving you insights into your business that you didn't have, stuff you never thought about. And where's the value for AI? As you look at people connecting up to applications and desktops and transferring information to other people inside and outside the organization, using apps, using data, creating new work products, where's the value in AI? Is it just in IT? Just in IT security? No, the value's to the business. And that's the other big thing with these technologies. These are not IT technologies, and if they're being implemented as such, there's so much more that can be done. There's also a real security and privacy issue associated with this. Right now, if you've got artificial intelligence going through and telling somebody within the organization, hey, here's some really cool stuff that we just learned that nobody else in the company knows about, how we're working with our customers, suppliers, how people affect price elasticity, stuff that the organization would just be salivating to get their hands on. Well, right now, if that's just being handled by an IT intern or fairly low-level admin, guess what? They have more power right now than your CEO and board of directors. That's a big deal. So when you roll out AI and ML, You have to remember these technologies are giving new insights into the business. Think very clearly about who should be getting that information, how that can be compartmentalized, and make sure that the value is not just within IT. So that's kind of what we can talk about today. Anything else that you came here to hear? All right. Should be kind of fun. Yes? The sounds are echoing everywhere up here, so sorry.
I know we've talked a lot about machine learning and AI, and I mean, it's compelling, it makes a lot of sense. How far are we from really seeing like machine learning and AI in the data center?
Okay. Question was, so a lot of people have been talking about machine learning and AI. How far are we seeing from this in the data center? We're seeing it today. There are several vendors that have technologies implemented that machine learning is going through and learning the network, and they're learning how things are shared within the network. And actually, there were machine learning algorithms 5-6 years ago that were predicting how the carriers were routing traffic through their networks. And the paths that they would take for optimization, for the best performance and the best cost, balancing those out, were a path that no human engineer would ever pick. It seemed so illogical, it was not even funny. But it was the right path. It was the right path, and it could dynamically adjust it. And so machine learning figured that out, and then artificial intelligence helps to predict that over time. And within Citrix, we've been doing that as well. We've had a NetScaler MOS, the management and analytics system, part of NetScaler, has been in place for a couple years now, going through and helping to provide insights into what's going on from all the data that passes through the NetScaler. Once again, as you authenticate into your environment, you put in your multi-factor authentication, your tokens, your passwords, your identity. And as you connect up to various applications, internally and externally, that goes through a NetScaler, including some of the biggest web properties out there in the world. All of that data can be utilized to help optimize how people are communicating. And we've been using that within Citrix, and I welcome you to look at that a little further. We've even expanded on that to provide the Citrix Analytics service that's going to be a component across all of our products, so that as you connect through to various applications, data, services, you're collaborating, you can go back through and, as a Citrix customer, be able to understand how your organization is working, where things are very effective, where you might have a group that's struggling a little bit. And from a security and risk management perspective, you can even look at the performance of individuals or teams. And so you could go down and see that there's one vice president that's accepting a certain amount of risk every single quarter at the last month of the quarter because he procrastinated. And you can give him a little additional remedial training. Or somebody who's really struggling with a certain application, and you can see that it's taking he or she 3 times longer than anybody else in the organization. Maybe they need a little training. Once again, some great information that will help the business and help individuals, but it can also bring up some privacy implications. So, yeah, great question. Yes?
When do you think we'll start seeing mainstream adoption of blockchains? To add to your buzzword.
Yeah, buzzword. We're working on buzzword bingo, by the way. Turn over your... So blockchain adoption. Blockchain adoption's out there right now. It's being used by a lot of financial services organizations to help with the distributed ledger problem. But if you think as well about blockchain adoption, there's a distributed ledger problem with things like firewall rules and IDS, IPS rules. And organizations that are sharing data with each other would like to. So the Financial Services ISAC has been together for years, and they share data between the different banks and financial institutions, but it's a very tight-knit group. The government's called for the rest of us to share data a little bit more, but oftentimes the data you're sharing needs to be anonymized, and you want people to be able to use it, but you don't want them to modify it or see the source. Blockchain can help with that, and so I personally see some very wide blockchain adoption within the next 3 years. Oh, good question. A lot of different things that we're working with today, a lot of different situations we're working in. One of the biggest issues, though, is that the rate of change is just something that people are having a hard time keeping up with. the dynamic nature of security, the changing threat landscape, all of the vulnerabilities that we need to be aware of. And could you pick up the device in your pocket right now and tell me what vulnerabilities you have on there and whether you're concerned about having your bank account on that device right now or not? I'm sure there are a couple people that can. For the rest of us, that can be a struggle. I mean, I've been up here for 10 minutes now. I can't tell you anymore because things have changed in the last 10 minutes. It really is that dynamic. When's the last time that you got a notification from your carrier or from your phone supplier that said, hey, you really need to update. We've got a security issue and we want to make sure you're taken care of, or your app vendors or anything? Or does this all just silently happen in the background? Sometimes. And sometimes not, because if you've got a phone that you haven't updated in a couple of years, guess what? Pretty much anybody can get on it these days through any network you connect to, and that's kind of scary. If they're targeting you, you've got a problem. We got to do better than this. A lot of other stuff. I'll leave this for us to go through later, but we really have to take a look at how changes are happening and how this digital disruption is affecting us. I've touched on a lot of these already, but the business model one is also very big because many traditional business models are completely being disrupted by mobility, cloud, millennials, and very soon with IoT and things like blockchain. You have to constantly be thinking, if you've got a business that's been running really, really well, how could somebody disrupt that? What would they need to do? If somebody were to come in with absolutely none of the legacy debt and baggage that you have that you're already supporting, how would they be able to do it better? You have to be thinking about that all the time, especially in terms of things like security. And when we take a look at security, we've got three different groups that we're typically thinking about. First one being users. And I'm saying from an organizational view, the theme is more, more, more. You can't see all of that from over there because it's being blocked. What do users want more of?
Access.
More access. Yep. What else? They want more autonomy, right? They want more freedom of choice. They want more apps. We see that all the time. What else do they want more of?
More freedom.
More freedom. That's the big one. Yep. What about IT? What does IT want more of? Control. Absolutely. That's the big one. What else? Trouble tickets. Yeah. Uh-oh. Somebody, yeah, we'll let that one go. What else? Structure. More technology. IT has got some very ingrained practices that they're basically perpetuating. And one of the things that we've got to think about is if you're part of an IT organization and you're looking for this from a more perspective, guess what? Somebody can come by and do it for less. The worst one, though, is the CSO. Your chief security officer or chief information security officer, what do they want more of? It's an easy one. Control. Yep. Visibility. And what are we always hearing? Need more money, need more people, right? If your answer to everything as a CSO is more money and more people, that's also a huge problem. We got to find a way to do this better with less money and less people. Artificial intelligence is going to help, but that reign of control is coming to a very quick end. In fact, one of the things that I like to show is this little slide. I never take pictures of slides when I'm at conferences. This one I did. This one struck me. This is from the Gartner IT Security and Risk Management Conference in Sydney, Australia last month that I presented at. I'll read it for those in the back. By 2022, in 60% of large enterprises, business units will select their desired level of cost and risk. Let that sink in for a second. Do you agree with that? Let's say they're even off by half. Wow. Does this change how we do IT? Quite a bit. Is this the way it kind of should have been in the first place? Yeah. So I've been doing this for a while, and when I started, it wasn't IT, it was information services. That made a lot more sense. And then we focused way too much on technology for several decades. I would beg all of us to go back and have more of an information services mentality from here on forward. Stop focusing so much on the technology and start focusing on what we're delivering. This is going to happen, and it's already been happening as people get out and buy their own mobile devices, mobile applications, cloud applications, and business units completely bypass IT in total. We can still be relevant, we can still have a lot of things that help these business units, but we have to keep this one in mind. And it's not just Gartner, there's a lot of other studies out there. Ponyman basically says a new IT security framework is needed. So what is that? I'm going to run through this really quick. From our perspective, the strategy is, number one, if you can virtualize access to your apps and data, do that. For any sensitive applications and data, if you're not shipping that data down to the endpoint, if you're not putting that data across the network, if you're not installing applications on every endpoint, what does that do to your security? Makes it much more effective. You know where your data has been distributed to. You've got control over the applications, their updates, their patches, and you can go back and from a governance or compliance perspective, answer all the questions on who's used the apps, how they've been authenticated. It's why most of the world utilizes virtualization, app and desktop virtualization, for access to things like PCI-based applications and HIPAA-based applications for healthcare. It's also a great way of delivering a lot of cloud-based applications. Believe that? Why? What about something like Office 365? Anybody use that? Know somebody who uses that? What can people do when they go home and they're using Outlook on Office 365 from their home PC or even a work PC when they go home? Export their mailbox, access everything. They can do anything they want, right? They have no control. They're outside of your network. They're outside of your controls. What would you like to be able to do? Well, what if you published Office 365, you publish that in a browser, and you lock that down with Citrix XenApp or XenDesktop, or another virtualization technology. I just happen to be partial to Citrix. You can control the ability to cut, copy, paste, save, print, or otherwise exfiltrate data on a per-app basis. You can determine what apps work with each other. If somebody launches something like Facebook or pulls up their personal information, that Office app or any of your sensitive company data can automatically be suspended in the background. And you can even control whether they can save down to USB keys or not, or just encrypted USB keys that are under organizational control. You can do that on a per-app basis. So if you need that level of control, even for web and cloud and SaaS-based apps, publish your browsers. Big, big hint. If you haven't thought about that before, we've got a paper that we've developed with this, and some really interesting integration with antivirus so that you can take a look at links that are coming in through email that people aren't supposed to click on. But even if they click on them, they open up in a one-time use browser, not connected to anything, not your registry, not your file system, not your endpoint, can silently go away, or you can have antivirus go through and say, here's exactly what happened in the background, and give you a whole bunch of forensic information from within memory, not from OS APIs like normal antivirus, but from within memory on the techniques that are being used. Want more info? Talk to me about that later. Secondly, there are times where people need to use offline data, and they absolutely have to have data carried with them. People who are working in emergency medical situations, healthcare, people who are linemen, a lot of the people who are fighting the fires here in California, they've got to have that data offline. You've got to make sure that that's protected in an enclave, especially if people are taking pictures of situations that they want to be able to send back, but it's very sensitive data. Have that automatically go into an enterprise managed enclave just because somebody's at work. It automatically handles it for them. And all of the data is protected, and it's separated from the data on their personal device if they're bringing in their own device. And by the way, all the other controls that I talked about in terms of copy, paste, et cetera, same thing. You can apply all of those to the containers. All of these capabilities need to be situational, though, so that when you're at work, certain things happen the way that they should when you're at work. When you're at home, they happen the way they should be when you're at home. And when you're traveling, especially internationally, maybe certain data is not available on your device. Maybe you just have virtual access. Maybe it automatically preloads some documents for you to look at on the airplane and updates things that you otherwise would have had to have gone and searched for. And it does it automatically. You can build all of that into policy. And it's more than policy, though. It's basically workflows. You have to think about how people are working throughout their days, all the different things that they do to collaborate and produce a work product, and build that into workflows along with security that are automatically controlled for the user. We leave way too much up to user action or inaction today. We can do better, and definitely have some ways to do that. And then I think I've talked enough about analytics and insights, but there's much more to that story. A lot of different initiatives that people are facing. I'll skip through this here pretty quickly. How many folks are familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework? Couple? Good. We said a new framework is necessary to help protect today. This might look somewhat familiar, but I want to run through a couple of things here. First of all, NIST went through and identified these core functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And they said that these are performed concurrently and continuously, not just at login, to form an operational culture, not just IT's responsibility, and addresses a dynamic cybersecurity risk. Once again, constantly changing. So applying this framework lets you get your hands around a few things. It's kind of interesting, though, when you look at that operational culture. How many people today, if you walked into a business unit and you said, what's your plan for respond and recover within the business unit? What do you think they'd say? We'll go talk to IT, right? That's IT's problem. Is it? Should it be? Remember, 60% of large enterprises moving these decisions. Business units should be responsible for respond and recovery. They're the ones who own the data. They're the ones who have the responsibility for it. They're the ones who know the data classification. They're closest to it. So we've got to partner with them more. But we also need to make sure that they're doing things the right way. Organizations have been hit by ransomware. I won't ask you to raise your hands because some people are a little sensitive to that. But we've all seen it in some way, shape, or form. How many business units just responded to ransomware by themselves? Either went out, paid the fine because it was low, or they said, hey, wait, I've got a backup of this from yesterday. I can just bring the data back. That's good, right? Right? You can tell that there's more to this. Anybody who's responded to ransomware by just restoring the data is kind of missing the point. Yep, you got your data back, fantastic. Or you paid the fine, you got your data back. But what else happened? That ransomware attack was not just there to encrypt your data. That attacked your endpoint, that attacked your network, that attacked your servers. That could have installed a secondary infection, infecting the operating system, other applications, your firmware. We've seen this. It might be silently waiting for command and control out into the future to do something else. So just restoring the data, did you take the attack and malware off your system? No, you didn't. Do the business units know this, or do they think they're really great because they restored their data? Yeah, you need to help them with this. The other thing is if you've got roots of trust associated with any of these, things like certificates, if your system got hacked, don't trust any of your roots of trust anymore. Completely reissue them. If you had servers and domain controllers that had certs on them, they have to be reissued. You've all done that, right? If you haven't, another helpful hint. Okay, I've gone through and for each of these put together some things to think about from the perspective of each one of the areas of the cybersecurity framework. In the interest of time, we're not going to run through this, but I'll make sure you have a copy of the presentations so that you can run through and take a look at these. Really, from an identify perspective, though, you've got a couple of cool things you can do, and artificial intelligence and machine learning will go through and help you identify the organizational use of your data, the roles that are using it, the relationships, how people are communicating it. Use that to help identify. In terms of protecting, you've got to make sure that you're helping to move the responsibility for defining protection closer to the business so that you're correlating the value of protection with the value of the assets. In terms of detecting, here's kind of a fun one. If you're in security, you've been part of the security team. What do you think about users? Yeah, yeah. Users are idiots. They're the biggest problem. They're the cause of all our security problems. We've all heard this before. Hopefully none of us have ever said that. But what if, because all your users and all their endpoints are out there basically as beacons, identifying what's going on, what if you use them to help crowdsource security? Identifying threats, identifying vulnerabilities, things that are unique, and actually using users and automating this to crowdsource a better source of security response and detection. From a respond perspective, make sure that you're tailoring your response, you're learning from everything. AI and ML will definitely help there. And from a recovering perspective, know that business resumption and disaster recovery are critically important functions. A lot of organizations are moving those to the cloud these days and saving a ton of money. If you're not doing that, talk to me later about that. I'll leave you with a couple of key questions. First of all, what's your cloud endpoint strategy? You've got people who are going directly to the cloud for their applications today. If you haven't thought about publishing your browser through XenApp for your cloud-based apps and stratifying those, you might want to think about that. Gives you the ability to have strong authentication, logging. You can even do mutual authentication down to the endpoint using NetScaler so that nobody can hit your app unless they've got the cert installed on their endpoint. You can bump up your cloud security quite a bit. Also, how do you make sure that the most sensitive data stays within defined project teams? So if you've got a top secret M&A project that you're working on with people within your company as well as external lawyers and partners, how do you make sure all the documents and all the work products are encrypted and they're only viewable by the people on that project team? Do you have projects that are that sensitive? If you do, you can use ShareFile to do this today. And you can add digital signatures automatically into this as well as watermarking so that you can make sure that you've identified who is working on this and keep people from utilizing it using DLP and information rights management technologies to help protect the data. Work situations. It's not just about logging in on your enterprise PC anymore. Think about all the different ways that people work, all the personas they need to express, whether it's a regular employee, whether it's as an administrator, as a supervisor. Keep all of those separated so that you don't have somebody logging in all at once and exposing all the risk in terms of their access credentials and personas. And think about how they work from home, internationally, from a competitor's office, from an airport, et cetera. And utilize what I like to call the 5 W's of access to design your policy on this. It's who, what, when, where, and why. Every single access request, every single transaction needs to factor in who, what, when, where, and why so that you can help to verify whether that should be granted or denied. And then IoT. We talked about this, the bridge between the physical and cyber worlds. Make sure you're factoring in safety. Prepare for IoT today. It is going to change our lives. And then the big one. Whether you agree with this or not, have these conversations with your management, with your teams, with your business units. IT has been changing. It's going to change even more. How can you help to facilitate the security decisions being moved to the right place within the organization? Every organization has a different right place, which is why you need to have those conversations. But start that today. With that, I'll leave you with a few key takeaways. Hopefully lunch is great. I'll be trying it here in a second. And thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Am I on? Am I on? Am I on? Am I on? Can you hear me? I can broadcast. Okay, cool. Before I introduce our next speaker, putting these things together isn't just something that we do. It requires a community to do it. And in our community, we have a lot of partners who believe in this kind of platform for sharing information and having an interactive event. And they don't go cheap, they go big because they know the importance of getting this time with you. And so I'd just like to take a second to recognize our sponsors, Veeam, Zentors, NetApp, Ivanti, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Citrix, and our platinum sponsor, Cisco. So thank you guys very much for today. Oh, God. They were on my head the whole time, and now they're gone. Okay. Before I introduce our next speaker, I talked earlier about how we have to be able to move faster as a VAR in order to produce services and solutions that are in line with key initiatives for you guys. And I talked about the fact that we're now in this kind of 6-month time frame, and it's even accelerating even further. So how, when you're swimming in one swim lane, let's say data center virtualization and desktop virtualization, do you pivot to cloud or digital transformation or desktop workspaces or what have you? In some cases, we have the internal capacity to build it ourselves. In other cases, we have to figure out how we can take care of these long-term relationships that we've had with you guys and bring you the best of breed people, products, and technology and solutions overall. And so there's a new model that is evolving in the VAR market space that is being led by our next speaker, Anoj, who I'll introduce in just a moment, that involves people that have been doing this as expert professionals, like you might know us in desktop and data center virtualization for years and years. They're well-known industry people. They bring the level of expertise you expect from us every single day. And what they do is they join our organization, not as an acquisition, but as a practice representing our organization as a whole, up until the point where then we're ready to just kind of go with it as we go forward. So how do we do something day one that we haven't done before and do it to the level that you have expected us to bring other types of solutions to you before? So with that, I'd like to introduce Anoj Willi. He's the CEO and co-founder of Zentors, a next-generation consulting and systems integrator specializing in digital business transformation. Before founding Zentors, Anoj has excelled for over 15 years as a strategist and advisor for an array of companies ranging from Fortune 100s to startups. He developed and operated cloud and high-performance computing systems for Patrick Soon-Shiong, a medical researcher and renowned entrepreneur focused on data-driven medicine and ranked by Forbes as the wealthiest American in healthcare. And he's done a lot of other things, so it's a very modest introduction. And I would embarrass him because he's next and he loves when I do that, and you know, he's the best dressed guy in the room. No offense to anybody else. So, Anoj, my friend.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right. Hope everyone's enjoying their steak. I'm on this vegetarian kick with my wife right now, so I think I'm getting a bigger salad later. I wish you could block documentaries on Netflix, so I'm just going to leave it on that. But change is hard, right? And I'm going through that right now, trying to be a vegetarian for just 1 month. But let me ask you guys a question, just on a personal note. Have any of you ever seen a ghost before? Nobody. Wow, that's great, because I don't believe in ghosts. Up until I bought this house in Long Beach. It was this 1920s house. I lived in it for a while. And one night, you know, late at night, I'm doing my work, just where I do my best work, or maybe the only time I do my work, actually. And I'm sitting there, I'm working on a presentation to do next week, or the next day. And it's 11 at night, and my daughter, who was 2 years old at the time, she walks in, and she says, "There's a man in my room," which is really freaky, because my daughter usually just talks about, you know, unicorns and ice cream, things that 2-year-olds talk about. So, you know, we went and checked it out, and she was very descriptive. She's like, you know, he's got dark hair and a purple shirt and everything. So we went and, you know, assured her, hey, nobody's in your room, go back to bed. Well, the second time, you know, it was a little freaky. By the third time she did that, and I was like, hey, listen, just go to bed, it's fine. My wife called our neighbor who said, oh, good thing you called me. There is a ghost in this neighborhood. I just chased it up from our house yesterday. It's probably over there. I'm going to come right over, which is the last thing I needed, right? So this lady comes over, and, you know, I don't know what they do. They go and have a seance or whatever. Ghost is gone. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning right now. I'm still trying to get this thing done. Our neighbor lady comes over and she's like, hey, are you working on an IT presentation? You know, I used to be in IT. Maybe I can help you. And I said, no, lady, you just need to go home right now, right? So I can work on this. And she said, listen, let me give you a piece of advice. If this ghost comes back, just all you need to do is stand in the middle of your living room and in a commanding voice, tell it to leave you and your family alone. And I was like, all right, thanks for your spell. I will try that later, thank you. So she goes home, I sit down to work on this thing, and I swear to you, I don't believe in ghosts, but something just went by my head. I was so scared, I'll be honest with you, I almost dropped a dookie in my pants. Like, this is a real moment for me, okay? Next thing I know, I was in the middle of my living room doing one of these things, just like probably not in a commanding voice, and just telling this ghost to go away. Why do I tell you this story, this ridiculous story? It's because 10 years ago, I've been doing this digital consulting thing for a long time. And we used to meet with the CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies. We used to meet with the CEOs of VARs. We did consulting and still do for folks like Cisco and Microsoft. And you would meet a lot of folks when you would tell them about things like, hey, you're probably not going to be selling as much hardware in a while. Cloud is coming, digital transformation is coming. They'd be like, yeah, kid, that's okay. Go back. They would do basically what I did to my daughter and my wife and sort of blow it off. And a lot of folks now when we meet, they're in this situation where they're just like, no, okay, this thing was real, right? And what's happening to us right now is this. It's the rate of change is exponential. In fact, you're probably not even paying attention to me right now because you're looking at this. Oh, what happened there? You're looking at this, and this is what our 2-million-year-old brain does. It gets confused by blinky lights. And the reason I say this is because decisions are coming at us faster than ever before, and they're more complex. How many of you have kids? Here. All right. How many of you are concerned that your kids spend too much time in front of a screen? All right. How many of you take your phones to bed with you at night? Yeah, that's a little hypocritical, right? We're connected to a computer, and if you lose it or it loses power, we kind of freak out for a while. We're like, where's my phone, right? And now, talking about decisions, you could have an extra bottle of wine, get on across 3 social media apps, and completely destroy your career in a night before you wake up the next day, right? So the pressure on these decisions is much greater than ever before. And so, like Mike was telling you guys, I actually worked for a fairly wealthy entrepreneur and a VC. Sorry, I don't know why this keeps doing this, but and a VC in the pharmaceutical era. He actually, his name is Patrick Soon-Shiong. He actually beat out Elon Musk for wealthiest guy in SoCal. Elon's back now with the Tesla, but Patrick likely got confused one day and he hired me, thinking I could help him. But I went and built their cloud and high-performance computing systems. But I'm not here to talk about Patrick's mistakes. I'm here to talk about mine. When we were over there, we had about 40 different business units in the pharmaceutical space. From genomics, we did a lot of machine learning. We did a lot of molecular modeling, so a lot of graphics processing, which is now used in image recognition today, using NVIDIA GPUs. 40 different business units, and we were trying to build a cloud platform for them, hybrid cloud platform. And one of the biggest mistakes we made was just going and trying to gather requirements, the old way of doing things, like we build infrastructure. We had actually hired one of the big 5 consulting companies. I just won't say their name. But they were like, let's go interview all 40 folks. And we're like, oh my gosh, that's a terrible idea because these guys don't even know what they want. But they came back and they're like, you need to build these 300 services. And right away, you know that's a problem, right? Because when you're talking about infrastructure, fine. That's how we used to build. But like Kurt was talking about, we need to move to this service-led mentality. And when you're thinking about services, think about a restaurant. You don't go to a restaurant because it has the most items on the menu, right? You go there because for an experience, whether it's fine dining, whether it's fast food or casual fast food, buffet, whatever that is, what we had to focus on was the experience, right? So that was one big failure I had. The second big failure we had was driving adoption, right? How many of us have been part of an organization that had a wiki or SharePoint, quad for the Cisco folks in the room, was built, never used, right? Was it because it wasn't technically put together correctly, right? We had technically put it together correctly, but what we didn't figure out was the experience. How are we fundamentally changing the experience from a digital perspective for our customers, right? So I left Patrick's. I actually ended up joining a VAR, a smaller VAR, maybe $200-300 million VAR, and built the cloud and DevOps practice for them, and took it, did pretty well with it actually, as well as the big data analytics practice that we built there as well. And we actually got invited by Cisco, by Chuck Robbins. This is before he ascended the throne, as it were. And he kind of asked us, like, hey, how did you guys do this? And first, we didn't think it was that unique, but he said, look, I've got 1,800 partners here. There's only 2 partners who can compete at your level. And it was us, and it was another sort of $4 billion VAR, right? You guys can Google all this and find out the names. But so we figured, hey, look, we've got something special here. And what we decided to do was go off on our own, start this company called Zentors, where we focus on DevOps, cloud, big data. But what we do is we partner with folks like Entisys, who are the VARs who have this established technology base, this established client base, and these really good client communications, and we bring that expertise, right? Now, we don't partner with every VAR. In fact, we only partner with 4. because this is not the Starbucks model. We're not looking for a partner in every corner. We're looking for very specific partners who can really dominate their area and really, more importantly, have the stomach to make that change because it's not easy. And we found that in Entisys360. So, one of the things, of course, being on the customer side, right, when I was an operator, the magical thing that vendors would love to do is this. Let me talk to you about these products. They're like, okay, look, I love products. I'm a product developer, but this was not helping. When I was a customer and yet another vendor came to me and they're like, I've got more line card of products, this actually became more confusing than helpful, right? And you look at all these products, by the way, this is 2016, just big data platforms. This has doubled in 2017, right? This becomes very difficult as a customer to figure out, hey, what's real here? And I'm sure, who's bought Lego before? Here, I'm sure all of you have bought some Lego. Lego, you get a nice picture in the front. You open up the box, it's a bunch of pieces. Well, I've got a guidebook to put those pieces together. But that doesn't exist for technology like this, right? So this is one of the big problems. So one of the first things we launched was this thing called a jumpstart. Hey, let me put all of those products together for you for everything above the box, right? And we put it together in a jumpstart. By the way, I came from product development. We didn't just go in some lab and develop this. We interviewed 45 CIOs to see what do you guys want, or guys and gals want to see. They came up with this. We developed this. This thing hit the skids faster than a Scaramucci, okay? It didn't last very long and had zero success. A lot of people wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to buy, right? And really what it came down to was this, right? You can have a product, you can have something that works. And the reason, sorry, I bring this up is because Gartner published this in 2015. Here's all the reasons why people fail. And look, at the VC, we used to do this stuff all day long, right? We used to talk about failed startups, like this is why this startup failed, or this is why IBM had the wrong market, and they didn't have the right supply chain, or they didn't have the right whatever. Most of that stuff's garbage, I'll be honest with you. Really, there's two big things, and it's hard to read here. One is sunk cost bias. Right? We as human beings love to throw good money after bad. We're doing that with a fighter jet in this country right now. It's like, well, we already put $2 trillion into it. Just keep pouring money, it'll work. The second and the biggest one is alignment and consent. I can come to you with some kind of product, but if I cannot gain alignment and consent from the rest of my leadership, it becomes very difficult. So let's think about this. In early 2000s, there was a great Newsweek cover that said, BlackBerry versus Nokia, who's going to battle it out to be king? Neither of them are around. Why? This thing took it, right? The iPhone. And think about in a boardroom of Nokia. I could hold this in my hand. I can hold the competition in my hand. And I can be like, okay, guys, why do we have a keyboard? Like, these guys don't have a keyboard. Makes sense, except in that boardroom is an executive who has 200 engineers here, maybe 2,000 engineers in a plant in Thailand, says, wait, I'm not going to build a keyboard anymore? They're not going to skinny down. In a corporation, a big corporation, people are power. If I have 2,000 people reporting to me and Dane has 1,000, I have more power than he does because I got more people. So I'm not going to skinny down to a 14-person team to build what actually might save the company. And so you run into these alignment problems. And that is actually the biggest challenge we find in big organizations when they're tackling these digital initiatives. So one of the things we came up with, we didn't actually come up with this. We stole this from Harvard, and Microsoft uses this, and we adopted it, to be honest. But it works. Is this innovation delivery framework. What we start with is envisioning, which is, hey, look, can we just get alignment before we get and talk about crazy technologies like why OpenStack versus VMware or pick your technology battle? Can the leaders align? Because if the leaders don't align, everybody else is left to fight bloody, unwinnable battles. And where you can align is things like use cases, instant developer environments, automated onboarding, those types of things. Once we get that alignment, we go into design. Design what we say. Engineering, there's 10 ways to do something, usually 3 good ways. What are those good ways? Then we build it. We're all familiar with the build part of this. But then the launch, this is a big part of where, if you remember, I talked about where we failed. How do you actually launch something, right? How do you actually get people to use it? I'm willing to bet a lot of you folks have services like Dropbox and Hotmail, Mint.com. When was the last time you signed into Mint.com to see all of their new things that they're doing? You don't even use the basic features, right? So how do you drive adoption to that platform? That's a big one, and this is one of the things that we do, right? So I'll give you a quick example where we're working with the Fortune 75 in East Coast, right? They realize, like, hey, we have millennials, and if we don't get on mobile application platforms, we are not going to get to the new generation of buyers, right? So we're helping them build their new application, it takes them 18 months to get a feature out the door. It's far too long, right? So we started this DevOps initiative with them. At first, they told us, hey, we don't need you. We got AWS, right? They're consulting for us. They quickly found out that AWS just knows about AWS, and there's a lot more to a project like this. So we were able to come in, do a workshop. We ended up working with the consumer line of business, which is about $16 billion unit. We helped containerize their app. Their main app is one of these where if you get in an accident, you can pop it up. It's a mobile app. It'll tell you all the fix-it shops in your area, if they take your insurance, estimation of damage, et cetera. Just makes the accident experience a lot better. So what we did is we containerized our applications on Docker, have it in a hybrid cloud setup, both on AWS and private cloud. We used some of the HashiCorp tools like Terraform and Vault to do secret passing and some of the configuration management. But now what we've been able to do, and this is an initiative across 3 major IT, consumer line of business, and the actual insurance brokers and agents. What they're able to do is they're able to push out applications and application features in 6 months. So we went down from 18 months down to 6 months. And this means I can take an idea from prototype to production very, very quickly. So now we're taking this not just from the consumer line of business, but to other lines of business as well. So let me give you another one. By the way, any questions on that? All right, I'm just ripping through this. We're doing a health information exchange in South Florida. What they found is they're pulling in data from providers, clinics, hospitals, a number of different providers. And they've been pulling it in and then normalizing them for claims, right? Claims data, they gave it to payors. Payors are insurance companies. Hey, I need to see if this, you had knee surgery, this is what the codes look like, et cetera. What they've realized is over the last 10 years, they've gathered a lot of this data, right? So first, we helped them sort of do that, normalize that, and move that data through. But now we've got this platform with all this aggregate data, and they're saying, hey, wow, we can actually provide an insurance company a better way to build a risk pool, right, than they can themselves. And we have the tools, and we have data across 30 insurance providers. So we're building that data platform using Flink and Kafka for real-time assessments, a Hadoop cluster, and applying actually a lot of the DevOps techniques to data here. So this is another one in the medical field where we're able to help them build business applications and then ultimately mobile applications for their providers, which is the hospitals and clinics, right? So really, I'm not going to dig into too much of this, but 2 of the things we espouse is in development, you have 2 teams. You have a feature development team, the folks that we consider devs, right, developers, building development and building features. But we also encourage what we call an infrastructure development team, right? You guys have all heard this term, infrastructure as code, I'm sure. And what we're seeing, though, is the cultural boundaries here of what used to be kind of traditional IT and dev. A lot of it is solved by kind of characterizing both of these and allowing infrastructure to use some of these development techniques, right? So what do I mean by infrastructure using some development techniques? If I go to a developer and say, hey, roll that code back 3 versions, they're like, sure, go to Git, do that. I go to a network engineer, I say, roll that back 3 versions. They're going to say, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I'm still making changes on the box. You still have those cutovers where like, hey, that's not working? Hang on a second. Try it now, right? Can't do that. You used to be able to do that maybe when you had 100 servers. 100 servers became 10,000 VMs. 10,000 VMs are about to be 100,000 containers. Good luck if you're going to manually try to provision all that stuff, right? So we also take customers through this prototype, pilot, and production. Prototype is how do I get an idea? How do I prototype it out, get some early customer wins? But MVP, or minimum viable product, that is something that we take 1 or 2 features and then drive them into production. And this, we do it in 2-week sprints, right? So from when I was a customer, what I really hated was, you're going to sit with me for 8 months to a year, and all we're going to do is talk about strategy? Like, don't leave me with a bunch of binders of diagrams and stuff like that, because it's useless, right? Help me get to a meaningful result in 6 months or less. And that's really what this is designed to do. Once you get that, and you get that 1 or 2 services out there, the momentum of the IT team changes. So we did a financial, just think about Amazon. Amazon released 1 service, S3. 4 years later, EC2. Now you go on the Amazon platform, and they're releasing a service, every couple of months. But on those first 2 services, they figured out the experience of Amazon. This is a developer-led experience. Okay, this is how we do billing, reconciliation, all those things. Once you help an IT team do that, they push out services every 3 to 4 weeks. And the speed, the velocity is incredible. Okay? So I'm not going to belabor this. Look, we are in the Bay. This is like the cradle of innovation here, right? And what I love this clicker. So what we find, though, is we work with a number of companies from the Bay, from small startups who say, listen, thanks for your help, but we've got way more ponytails than you, and we're just going to go at this ourselves. and that's fine. Sometimes they help us. We learn from them as well. But 80% or more of the companies we find, we can generally help, right? What I generally say is, you're going to know your business better than we do. You should. But we're going to know technology better than you do, because we spend all our days doing that. We've done this dozens and dozens of times. And really, all we help you do is you'll figure it out. But what might take you 3 years to do, we'll help you do in a year or less, right, for a fraction of the cost. So you guys have heard this quote, I'm sure. Bill Gates, right? He says, we often overestimate the amount of change that'll happen in 2 years, underestimate the amount of change that'll happen in 10, don't get lulled into inaction. 10 years ago, somebody came to you and said, hey, Amazon is going to compete for the majority of IT spend. Most people would have been like, the bookseller? Please give me a break, right? So don't get lulled into inaction. Get started now, and don't become a ghost of the past. Thank you very much.